My mother-in-law insisted on planning our baby shower, but her guest list revealed a secret that ended our marriage. When Ethan and I announced we were expecting our first child, his mother, Eleanor, immediately swooped in like a perfectly coiffed vulture. "Darling, you just focus on growing that precious baby," she said, placing her manicured hand on my barely there bump. "Let me handle everything else." At first, I was grateful. Between morning sickness and my demanding job at the advertising agency, I barely had energy to brush my teeth, let alone plan a party. Eleanor seemed genuinely excited about her first grandchild, but something felt off when she insisted on handling the invitations herself. "It's a surprise, sweetie. Trust me, I know exactly who needs to be there," she'd say whenever I asked about the guest list. Every time I offered to help with addresses or suggest friends to invite, she'd wave me off with that practiced smile. Ethan thought it was sweet. "Mom just wants everything perfect for her first grandchild," he said. "Let her have this." The shower was scheduled for Saturday afternoon at Eleanor's prestigious country club. She rented the entire garden pavilion, complete with a 3-tier cake and enough pink decorations to blind someone. Everything was beautiful. Too beautiful, actually. Like she was trying to impress someone specific. That morning, my phone started buzzing with confused texts from friends. "Hey, did I miss something? When's your shower?" My college roommate Chloe wrote. "I thought we were close. Congratulations anyway," texted my work friend Sophia. My stomach twisted. I called Eleanor immediately. "Oh honey, space was limited at the club," she said smoothly. I had to prioritize family and Ethan's important business connections. Important business connections. For a baby shower. When we arrived at the club, I felt like I'd walked into someone else's party. I recognized exactly 3 people: my mom, my sister Emily, and Ethan's Aunt Patricia. The other 25 guests were complete strangers to me, well-dressed women in their late 20s to early 30s, all impeccably styled, all blonde, all stealing glances in my direction. "Who are all these people?" I whispered to Ethan. He looked just as confused. "I thought they were your friends. Mom said she'd invited your social circle." During the gift opening ceremony, I noticed something odd. Every single present had a card signed with unfamiliar names: Scarlett, Isabella, Aubrey, Madison, Ava. But the handwriting on all of them looked identical, the same looping cursive, the same black ink pen. Someone had written all these cards themselves. That's when a woman with platinum blonde hair approached me. She wore a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Congratulations, dear," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Scarlett Jensen. We have so much to catch up on. I'm sorry, have we met?" I asked. Her smile faltered. "Ethan never mentioned me." "That's interesting." Before I could respond, another woman joined us, a redhead with dark roots. "This is incredibly awkward," she said flatly. "He told us you knew about everything." My blood ran cold. "Knew what?" I managed to ask. The blonde woman, Scarlett, exchanged a meaningful look with her friend. "About the support group, sweetheart. The one for Ethan's other women," she said matter-of-factly. Eleanor started it after wife number 2 couldn't handle the transition. The world tilted sideways. Wife number 2. That's when I really looked around the pavilion and realized what I was seeing. 25 women, all blonde or recently blonde, all around my age, all watching me with a mixture of pity, recognition, and something that looked like relief. "Your wife number 4, the redhead said gently. "I'm Isabella Ramirez, wife number 3, divorced 8 months ago when I found out about the others." My legs nearly gave out. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. "4 wives," I whispered. "That we know of," Scarlett said. "There might be more who haven't found our little support network yet." I looked around desperately for Ethan. He was across the pavilion, deep in conversation with his mother, completely oblivious to the bomb being dropped on his pregnant wife. "The first wife was Ava Thompson," Isabella explained. "Married right out of college. She lasted 2 years before she found out about Madison. Madison Kim was the second," another woman added. That's when Eleanor started the support group. My hand instinctively went to my stomach. "I'm 4 months pregnant." The women exchanged knowing looks. "So was Madison when she found out about me," Scarlett said softly. "And I was 5 months pregnant when I discovered Isabella existed." "What happened to the babies?" I asked, dreading the answer. Miscarriage from the stress, Scarlett said, her voice flat with old pain. The doctors said it was the shock and emotional trauma. Isabella wasn't so lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it. She pulled out her phone and showed me a picture of a beautiful little girl with curly blonde hair and Ethan's unmistakable green eyes. Harper just turned 3 last month. Ethan hasn't seen her since our divorce was finalized. Eleanor sends money sometimes, guilt payments, I call them, but she's made it very clear that I'm not welcome in their family anymore. The pieces of my life started falling apart like a house of cards. Ethan's frequent business trips that seemed to have no clear purpose. The way he guarded his phone like it contained state secrets. How he'd convinced me to move across the country from my family in Colorado, saying his business opportunities were better here in New York City. He's still legally married to Madison, another woman said quietly. She was tiny and looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. I'm Mia Rodriguez. Their divorce was never finalized, something about paperwork complications that Ethan kept creating. The ground beneath me shifted. That means our marriage isn't even legal. None of ours were, Scarlett confirmed grimly. Except Ava's. She was the only legitimate wife. The rest of us were just accessories. I felt physically sick. How long has this been going on? 12 years, Isabella said. Since he graduated college. Eleanor keeps track of all of us in a little leather notebook she carries in her purse. She calls it her daughter-in-law management system, like we're inventory to be tracked. She invited us here to meet you, Scarlett explained. To officially welcome you to the sisterhood of Ethan's victims. She does this every time he gets a new woman pregnant. It's her twisted idea of transparency. Why didn't anyone try to warn me before this? I asked. We tried, Mia said earnestly. Remember the woman who approached you at Trader Joe's 3 months ago? That was me. I remembered now. A frantic-looking woman had cornered me in the produce section, insisting she knew my husband. I'd assumed she was some jealous ex-girlfriend and hurried away. And the anonymous letter you received 2 months ago, Isabella added. That was me. The letter. I'd thought it was from some bitter ex trying to ruin my happiness. It had contained vague warnings about Ethan's character and a phone number to call. I'd shredded it without a second thought. We have a whole system now, Scarlett explained, pulling out her phone to show me a group chat. We try to reach the new ones before it's too late. But Ethan's gotten smarter about keeping his women isolated. Eleanor coordinates everything, Isabella continued. She helps him scout new targets, usually through her charity work or social club activities. Young women, preferably with no close family nearby, Aubrey listed. Blonde, educated, financially independent, but not wealthy enough to be suspicious of his lifestyle. I fit the profile perfectly. I'd moved to New York City for what I thought was a dream job, leaving my parents and sister back in Colorado. I'd met Ethan at one of Eleanor's charity galas, where she'd introduced us with glowing praise. The pregnancy was planned, I realized aloud. He wanted me pregnant. Pregnant women are less likely to leave, Scarlett said sadly. And Eleanor is obsessed with babies. She's desperate for grandchildren to spoil and show off. What about all the other children? I asked. 7 total, including yours, Isabella said, pulling out what looked like a handwritten family tree. Harper's the oldest at 3. Then there's Mason, who's 2.5. He lives with Madison's parents in Texas since she had a complete breakdown. Twins Noah and Ella are with their aunt in Georgia after wife number 2, Olivia Davis, was hospitalized for severe depression. And Savannah has 18-month-old twins, Liam and Charlotte. 7 children, all with different mothers, all being raised without their father because he was too busy collecting new wives to care for the families he'd already created. My sister Emily appeared at my side, having noticed my distressed state. What's going on? She asked, eyeing the circle of blonde women with growing alarm. These are Ethan's other wives, I said numbly. Emily's face went completely white. Other wives? What do you mean, other wives? Before anyone could explain further, Ethan finally noticed our gathering. I watched his face change when he saw exactly who I was talking to. The color drained from his cheeks, and he started walking toward us with quick, determined steps. Ladies, he said with forced cheerfulness when he reached us. I see you've all met my beautiful wife. Which wife would that be exactly? Scarlett asked coolly. Ethan's jaw tightened. Mom mentioned she'd invited a few old friends to the shower. I didn't realize you'd all be here together. Surprise, Isabella said dryly. We brought gifts. She handed me a thick manila envelope. Inside were photocopies of marriage certificates, divorce papers, birth certificates, hospital records, and court documents. A complete paper trail of Ethan's 12-year pattern of deception. The private detective we hired put this together, she explained while Ethan tried to grab the envelope. Every woman deserves to know exactly what she's dealing with. Ethan managed to snatch some papers, but Emily quickly stepped between us. Don't you dare touch her, she warned. This is absolutely ridiculous, Ethan said, his facade finally cracking. These women are bitter and jealous because they couldn't handle sharing me with my business responsibilities. Moved on, Mia laughed bitterly. You're still sending me court-ordered child support for twins you've never bothered to meet. You've never even asked their names. Eleanor appeared beside her son like she'd been summoned, her face tight with annoyance. Girls, please don't make a scene, she said sharply. This is supposed to be a joyful celebration. A celebration of what? I asked, finding my voice. Your son's fourth bigamous marriage. Now, dear, bigamy is such a harsh legal term, Eleanor said dismissively. Ethan is simply a man who loves deeply. Some people are meant to have expansive hearts. Love, Scarlett scoffed. Your son is a serial predator who uses you to enable his behavior. Eleanor's composure cracked slightly. I've tried to make amends. The support group, the monthly checks, helping with legal fees. You help him find new victims, Isabella interrupted. You scout them at your charity events and social clubs. You research their backgrounds to make sure they fit his preferred profile. The other shower guests had started to notice the commotion. Several elderly women in expensive jewelry were whispering and pointing. My mom and Ethan's Aunt Patricia approached with confusion and growing concern. What in the world is happening here? My mother asked. I'm finding out that my marriage isn't legal, I said, my voice cracking. And I'm pregnant with a child whose father already has 7 other children with different women that he doesn't support. My mother's face went through several emotions before settling on pure rage. She turned to Ethan with fire in her eyes. You lying, manipulative son of a bitch, she said with deadly calm. How could you do this to my daughter? How could you look me in the eye at family dinners and pretend to be a loving husband? Mrs. Caldwell, please calm down, Ethan said desperately. There's been a serious misunderstanding here. The only misunderstanding, my mother cut him off, is thinking you could get away with this forever. Did you really believe none of these women would ever find each other? I looked around at the faces surrounding me. The other wives watching with sympathy and solidarity, my family radiating protective anger, the country club guests whispering and taking pictures. And at the center, Ethan and Eleanor, finally caught in their web of lies. I want to go home, I said quietly. Of course, sweetheart, Emily said, putting her arm around me. Let's get you out of here. As we gathered my things, Scarlett pressed a business card into my hand. We meet every Thursday evening at 7:00, she said quietly. Coffee shop on Main Street called The Daily Grind. You don't have to go through this alone. I nodded, unable to speak through the tears. What about all the lovely gifts? Eleanor called after us, as if baby shower presents were the priority. Keep them, I said without turning around. Consider them payment for the criminal defense lawyer I'm about to hire. The drive back to his downtown apartment was a blur of tears, phone calls, and planning. Emily drove while talking to our dad, who immediately started looking up flights. My mother called her lawyer friend for referrals. Everyone sprang into action while I sat in shocked silence, processing the magnitude of Ethan's deception. The apartment felt different when we walked in. The photos on the walls of our happy life together now looked like evidence in a crime scene. The nursery we'd been preparing felt like a monument to my naivety. Emily helped me pack while we waited for my parents. She found Ethan's home office unlocked and discovered a filing cabinet full of disturbing documents. Bank accounts I'd never heard of, life insurance policies on women I now knew were his other wives, a detailed calendar system tracking when each woman was ovulating. This is so much worse than just bigamy, Emily said, photographing everything. This is systematic fraud and possibly identity theft. That evening, as I sat in a hotel room near the airport with my family, Ethan came looking for me. Hotel security footage would later show him pacing in the lobby for hours, making increasingly frantic phone calls. He finally got through to my phone around midnight. "We need to talk," he said, desperation and anger in his voice. "I think we're past talking," I replied, not looking up from the legal documents. "Unless you want to explain how you married 4 different women while only divorcing one. Those women poisoned you against me," he said, launching into what sounded rehearsed. "They're bitter because they couldn't handle the complexity of loving someone like me. I have a big heart, and they couldn't understand that love doesn't have to be possessive love." I laughed without humor. "Ethan, you committed fraud multiple times. This isn't about free love. You're a criminal who lies to women to get them pregnant and then abandons them." "I never abandoned anyone," he protested. "I provide financial support. I make sure everyone is taken care of. When's the last time you saw Harper or Mason or any of the twins?" I asked. "When's the last time you changed a diaper or stayed up all night with a sick child?" He had no answer. "You don't love us," I continued, my voice getting stronger. "You collect us like trophies or vintage cars, something to possess and show off when convenient, then store away when you're busy with the next acquisition. And your mother helps because she's addicted to playing grandmother to children whose mothers you systematically destroy." The line went quiet. "I love you," he said finally, his voice small. "I love all of you. I know that's hard to understand, but my capacity for love is just bigger than most people's." "Your capacity for love might be big," I said, surprised by my calm tone, "but your capacity for responsibility is non-existent. Love isn't just a feeling, Ethan. It's a commitment. It's showing up every day, especially when it's hard. You've never done that for anyone." 3 months later, I was back home in Colorado, living with my parents while working with lawyers to untangle the legal nightmare Ethan had created. The divorce was complicated by the invalid marriage, but there were still custody and child support issues for the baby. I joined the Thursday evening support group via video call from my childhood bedroom. There was something deeply healing about talking to women who understood exactly what I'd been through. We shared resources, legal advice, childcare strategies, and most importantly, the truth that none of us were to blame. Scarlett had become our group leader over the years. She'd been tracking Ethan's patterns the longest and had developed an extensive system for warning new targets. They'd successfully intervened in 3 potential relationships since my shower, probably saving those women years of trauma. "He's getting increasingly sloppy," Scarlett reported during one weekly call. "Eleanor's frustrated that her recruitment system isn't working anymore. Word is getting out in their social circles, and several charity organizations have quietly removed her from their boards." The support group had also connected with wives we hadn't known about. 2 more women came forward after seeing news coverage. The total count was now 6 wives and 9 children, with more potentially undiscovered. During our meetings, I learned the full scope of what Ethan and Eleanor had been doing. They had developed an intricate system over 12 years, with Eleanor serving as talent scout, relationship coordinator, and damage control specialist. Ava, the first wife, shared her story during one particularly emotional session. "I thought I was going crazy," she said. "Ethan would disappear for days, claiming business trips, then come back with elaborate explanations. When I found women's clothing that wasn't mine in our closet, he convinced me I was having memory problems from stress." Madison, wife number 2, had been recruited through Eleanor's book club. "She befriended me for months before introducing Ethan," Madison explained. "She knew I'd just moved to town for work, had no local support system, and was struggling financially. She positioned Ethan as this successful businessman who could provide stability. The pattern was always the same. Eleanor would identify vulnerable women, usually recent transplants to New York City, financially independent but not wealthy, typically working in creative or service fields where irregular schedules seemed normal. She'd cultivate friendships through her various social activities, learning about their backgrounds, family situations, and emotional vulnerabilities. Then she'd engineer a chance meeting with Ethan at one of her events. He'd sweep them off their feet with lavish attention, expensive gifts, and promises of a perfect future together. The relationship would move quickly, usually engagement within 6 months and marriage within a year. "He's incredibly convincing," Olivia, wife number 2, shared during one call. He makes you feel like you're the most important person in the world. He remembers every detail you tell him, surprises you with thoughtful gestures, introduces you to his successful friends. By the time you're married, you're completely dependent on him emotionally and often financially. The pregnancies were always planned, though the women didn't realize it at the time. Ethan would sabotage birth control or pressure for children with talk about how much he wanted to start a family. Once pregnant, the women were effectively trapped, emotionally invested, financially dependent, and isolated from their original support systems. I had terrible morning sickness with the twins, Mia shared. Ethan hired a nanny and convinced me to quit my job to focus on my health. I thought he was being supportive, but really, he was making sure I couldn't leave easily. Eleanor's role was crucial in maintaining the deception. She managed Ethan's complicated schedule, ensuring wives rarely crossed paths. She handled much of the financial coordination, managing separate bank accounts, paying bills, even managing some of the women's personal finances to reduce their stress. She had spreadsheets, Isabella revealed, detailed charts tracking our cycles, our schedules, our emotional states. She knew which of us were having problems with Ethan and would adjust his availability accordingly. When marriages started falling apart, usually when wives discovered evidence of other women, Eleanor would spring into damage control mode. She'd gaslight the wives, suggesting they were imagining things or misunderstanding innocent situations. She'd offer therapy recommendations. Therapists she'd vetted to support her narrative and increase her emotional manipulation. She convinced me I was having postpartum depression, Olivia said. She said my suspicions about Ethan were symptoms of my condition and that I needed to focus on getting well for my children's sake. If wives became too suspicious or discovered concrete evidence, Eleanor would shift to her support group strategy. She'd gradually introduce them to other former girlfriends who, learned to accept Ethan's complex emotional needs. The idea was to normalize the situation and create a sense of sisterhood among the women. The first time I met Madison, Eleanor presented it as therapy, Scarlett explained. She said Madison had gone through similar jealousy issues and could help me work through my insecurities about Ethan's female friends. Some women bought into this narrative, especially those who were pregnant or had young children and felt trapped. But others, like Isabella and Scarlett, saw through the manipulation and began documenting evidence for legal action. That's when Eleanor would get nasty, Isabella said. She'd threaten custody battles, claim we were unfit mothers, say Ethan would fight for full custody if we tried to leave. She had lawyers on retainer who specialized in intimidating vulnerable women. The breaking point for many wives came when they realized the scope of Ethan's deception. Not just multiple relationships, but the financial fraud, forged documents, and identity theft that supported his lifestyle. He had credit cards in my name that I never applied for, Madison said. He'd been using my social security number to open accounts and take out loans. When I left him, my credit was destroyed. 6 months after the shower, I gave birth to Hope in a Denver General Hospital, surrounded by my real family. Ethan appeared with flowers and tears, but I'd already filed restraining orders. I'll change, he promised through the glass of the NICU. I'll divorce the others properly. We can be a real family. You had 9 chances to be a real father, I told him. Hope makes 10. I'm not interested in giving you an 11th opportunity. Security escorted him out, and he never returned. Eleanor tried a different approach, hiring expensive lawyers to demand grandparents' rights. But when the magistrate reviewed evidence of her active role in Ethan's deception, including testimony from 6 mothers and phone records showing her coordination of his activities, he dismissed her petition entirely. Mrs. Caldwell, the magistrate said, disgust clear in his voice. Your enabling of your son's fraudulent and emotionally abusive behavior has caused immeasurable harm to multiple families and children. Until you demonstrate genuine accountability and seek appropriate mental health treatment, this court will not grant you access to any of his children. The Thursday group celebrated that victory with takeout and champagne. It was the first time any of us had seen real legal consequences for what they'd done. 2 years later, I've built a genuine life with Hope in Colorado. She's beautiful and brilliant, with her father's green eyes but none of his capacity for deception. I work remotely for a sustainable fashion company, which gives me flexibility to be present for her in ways Ethan never was for any of his children. My parents have been incredible, providing not just financial support, but emotional healing. Watching my father read bedtime stories to Hope and seeing my mother teach her to bake cookies has shown me what real, unconditional family love looks like. The Thursday group continues meeting, now with 12 members as more women have come forward. We've become genuine friends, united by our shared experience but no longer defined by it. Several women have started new relationships with partners who understand their history and support their healing. It's funny, Scarlett said during a recent call. Ethan thought he was collecting us, but really he brought together the strongest, most resilient women I've ever known. Last month, Isabella called with news that felt like justice finally arriving. Ethan had been arrested for federal bigamy charges after one of his newer victims. A woman named Zoe, who'd found our support group through Instagram, pressed criminal charges. He's looking at 7 to 10 years, Isabella reported. And Alina has been charged as an accessory for her role in facilitating his crimes. The FBI investigation had uncovered even more disturbing details: bank accounts in multiple states, forged documents, identity theft, tax evasion, and what prosecutors called systematic relationship fraud designed to exploit vulnerable women for financial and emotional gain. Alina's carefully constructed social facade had crumbled completely. Her membership in exclusive clubs was revoked, her charity board positions eliminated, and her social circle had abandoned her entirely. The woman who'd spent decades building a reputation as a pillar of New York City society was now facing federal charges and social exile. Justice feels good, Isabella said. Even when it comes late. I agreed, though I knew the real justice was simpler than legal consequences. All of us had escaped. We de-found each other, supported each other through healing, and refused to let his lies define our futures or our children's lives. Sometimes, I think about that baby shower and how different my life might have been if those brave women hadn't found the courage to tell me the truth. The shower had been meant to welcome me into Alina's twisted system, but instead, it became the moment I learned to trust my instincts and prioritize my daughter's well-being. I'll always be grateful they refused to let me become another casualty of Ethan and Alina's sick game. Their intervention probably saved Hope from growing up in a household built on lies, watching her father disappear for mysterious business trips that were actually visits to his other families. Hope is napping now as I finish writing this, her small hand clutching a stuffed elephant Emily gave her. She'll grow up knowing her worth isn't determined by any man's attention. She'll know to trust her instincts when something feels wrong, even if everyone around her insists it's normal. Most importantly, she'll know that sometimes the most loving thing people can do is tell you the truth, even when it destroys everything you thought you knew about your life. The Thursday group taught me that real love doesn't require you to share it with multiple people in secret.